This is an article about an ex-cop by the name of Mark Miller, who, in a road rage shooting, was not indicted, not prosecuted, simply a plea deal on the side, quietly made the case disappear. And that is what this article I am publishing on my YouTube channel is about. And you compare that to Desiree Yagan, 1 year probation, $350 fine, subjected to an illegal strip search on April 17, 2019, after arrested in the Supreme Court Law Library. Okay. Cicero road rage. Could shooter's handgun really gone off by accident? January 13, 2016. I just came across this article yesterday. Today is February 29, 2024. Mark Miller walks to Cicero Town Court with his attorney, Rome Canzona, before sentencing Tuesday for a misdemeanor charge after a road rage incident. A former military police officer, an ex-Oswego police officer, says he didn't mean to shoot a man who opened his passenger car door, threatening him during a Cicero road rage incident, December 2nd, 2015. And of course, that's his version. I will be publishing the actual report, arrest report, and it will be uploaded on Scrib and linked on my YouTube channel. Mark J. Miller, 49, admitted he pointed a loaded 9mm Glock semi-automatic at Robert Tifft. But what happened after that was an accident, he said. Mark Miller said he was as surprised as anybody else that it fired. Tifft was struck below the arm and treated for a non-life-threatening injury. Could Mark Miller's gun have just gone off on its own? Not realistically. District Attorney Fitzpatrick said Miller's explanation that the gun went off, not realistic. Mr. Miller claims the weapon discharged accidentally, though common sense would suggest that explanation is not plausible. The DA stated in his letter to the editor to Syracuse.com on Tuesday, and I direct your attention to the articles January 11, 2016, where District Attorney William Fitzpatrick accuses the victim, Robert Tifft, of lying to the media, calling it a cover-up, stating that Mark Miller was given special treatment by the District Attorney's Office, whereby he was allowed to plead guilty to a misdemeanor, reckless endangerment. And he had no idea about the plea deal. He was not informed. He knew nothing until he read it in the news. You can't reconcile the two. Okay, so this is the alternative version by William Fitzpatrick. Mr. Miller claims this weapon discharged accidentally. Not surprisingly, Robert Tifft, who was shot, describes Miller as shooting him deliberately. An East Syracuse firearms instructors say Glocks are some of the most reliable, easy-to-maintain guns on the market. David Colburn, a state and National Rifle Association certified instructor, said there's only one way a Glock could fire a bullet, by pulling the trigger. David Colburn of Shooter's Haven said that he teaches people never to put their finger on the trigger unless they're planning to shoot. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire it, Colburn said. That's not mechanical, that's emotional. He pointed to ex-police officer Mark Miller's description of Tifft coming at his car as evidence that Miller feared for his life. And again, this is the Mark Miller, ex-police officer, Oswego, ex-military, says he was in fear for his life. Miller's lawyer said Tifft lunged at him 3 times. Isn't it interesting that Miller's lawyer says this? Lunged at him 3 times with something pointy. Something pointy. It's an interesting choice of words. A charge, an accusation that the victim, Robert Tifft, denies. William Fitzpatrick says what exactly happened isn't clear. Well, I say to you, it would be crystal clear had there been a grand jury indictment in a investigation full with forensics of this shooting, but that would never happen with William Fitzpatrick. His policy and practices protect all cops. And then they are beholden to him, and that's how he maintains his strong relationships with these cops. And all cops, in fact, knowing the DA will always have their back, regardless of the criminality they engage in, regardless if they're innocent or guilty. Doesn't matter. They're guilty. He has their back. Colburn said it's not unusual for someone in self-defense situations not to remember pulling the trigger. That person is shaking and scared and often has amnesia. We are talking about an ex-military police officer, ex-Oswego police officer. Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. Trained responses are different, but you still have to overcome natural responses. You don't want the responsibility or consequences of firing a firearm, he said, but Glocks, which Colburn said are used in 65% of law enforcement, do not shoot themselves. Miller's lawyer, Mark Miller's lawyer, Canzano, said his client's law enforcement training could not prepare him. Is that unbelievable? Could not prepare him for the split-second reaction. The real question is what you would have done in that situation, Canzano asked. I don't know. I don't think he knew. You mean the ex-military, ex-police officer from Oswego? Canzano said that his client saw a muzzle flash and saw Robert Tifft disappear from view. Where would he have gone? He's in the car, Mark Miller. He pulls his Glock. He shoots Robert Tifft, and he says he doesn't know what happened to him. Well, only one thing. Either he was seen running away, or, in the alternative, he fell to the ground. There's not any other options. But this is what his story is. He did not realize Tifft had been struck. Miller drove away from the scene. He turned himself in later that evening. Wait to see the story on that published in the paper, various versions. The truth will be in the, a version of the truth will be in the arrest reports and what the Sheriff's Department and Cicero Police report. Okay, so Miller drove away from the scene before turning himself in later that evening. District Attorney Fitzpatrick said the fact Miller drove away from the scene is not a crime. What does that make me think of? There is no Good Samaritan law. That's referring to Edward Ackerman, who did not stop for Seth Collier after Peter Ross, District Attorney William Fitzpatrick investigator, hit him and fled the scene, and he was driving behind him. That would be Edward Ackerman, EMT, fireman, Brunett County, or City of Syracuse. And he did not stop and offer aid, and then locked the police out from the bar that he owned for over an hour, which allowed Peter Ross time to flee from the parking lot at the bar, to leave his car and walk to his house, and then obtain a ride to Liverpool, where the police found him 8-10 hours later, supposedly. Canzano said his client saw a muzzle flash and saw Robert Tifft, the victim, disappear from view, but did not realize he had been struck. He saw a flash from his gun, from his Glock. Doesn't look, doesn't open his door, doesn't see anything. It's all a lie. District Attorney Fitzpatrick said the fact Miller drove away from the scene was not a crime. And this is what William Fitzpatrick says. He said, District Attorney Fitzpatrick said the plea agreement came before his office presented the shooting to a grand jury. That's not how it happens. The plea agreement isn't outside of the DA's office. It is the DA's office that makes the plea agreement with the defendant. It's just shocking. Well, not shocking. It's absolutely District Attorney William Fitzpatrick's, how he operates. He said the plea agreement came before his office presented the shooting to a grand jury. That is so ludicrous. The grand jury could have indicted Miller on a more serious felony charge. Could have recommended a similar misdemeanor, reckless endangerment, are you kidding? Or cleared Miller of wrongdoing. By the way, the correct charge would be assault with a deadly weapon. Okay? The grand jury could have indicted him for a more serious felony charge. So, of course, as I said, it's called assault with a deadly weapon. Recommended a similar misdemeanor or cleared him. Mark Miller said at sentencing Tuesday in the Cicero Town Court that he was, quote, anxious to get the matter resolved and behind him. The misdemeanor plea required Mark Miller to surrender his pistol permit and guns. He was not fined. He was not given probation. He didn't spend an hour in jail. Unlike Desiree Yagan, who was sentenced 1 year probation, 16 conditions, and $350 fine. So yeah, this is how William Fitzpatrick operates his office in Onondaga County.